that proposal, just as I said, and others did, and frankly, some Republicans as well as Democrats did. But I think what I'm trying to do now is to put it in focus so the American people will understand that it is the Congress that must move now to bring this deficit under control. Yeah, follow-up is
yes,
this?
Sir. Other than sequestration, do you have any tools at your disposal to get anything done on this?
Well, sequestration is a pretty strong one, and veto is a helpful one.
Publicly?
No, not now. I still have hopes that we can resume this this kind of symmetry that is essential if you're going to get a deal. And I felt that way when we entered into the deal. And I still feel that way, in spite of the fact that I do think there has been some politics rearing its head. Yeah.
President,
Please go ahead.
assuming that Saddam Hussein were to work out some face-saving way to withdraw from Kuwait, he would still be there with a very large army, still presumably intimidating to his neighbors, having invaded once. Given all that, do you think it is possible for this crisis ultimately to be resolved without removing Saddam Hussein from power, and if so, how?
All I want to do is see it resolved the way that the world opinion wants it resolved, and then we will worry about the rest of that later on. But the main thing is to have the withdrawal and the restoration of the rulers to their responsibilities. And so it's too hypothetical for me to go into what happens beyond that. But yes, I'd like to feel that can still happen. And the economic sanctions are just beginning to, Marlon says pinch, I'd say bite. And I think that they're going to be quite effective, more so than in the past. I certainly hope so. So let's just see how all that works. Jerry?
Mr. President, if I could go back to the naval interdiction effort for a second. The Soviets apparently are proposing some kind of a joint Security Council command to control the naval interdiction effort. Are you pursuing that in any way with the Soviets, and are you interested in the idea at all?
Well, there was originally I think that was raised to Jim Baker by Shevardnadze, and I don't have any any problem with talking to the Soviets about that. I think it would be a very good thing to have an active Soviet presence to enforce these UN resolutions. All I'm saying is I don't think it is essential that you have a UN flag in order to for countries to carry out their responsibilities. But I'd be somewhat open-minded to talk further along those lines, and
Do you think it will be necessary at some point to stop ships going into Aqaba, because that is a potential lifeline?
I think at some point it might well be. If it's a hole through which commerce flows in an otherwise tight net, I would certainly think that Aqaba should be closed to Iraqi commerce. Yeah.
I have a question about the budget, Mr. President. After 100 days of negotiating, don't you think the I'll show you mine, you show me yours strategy is getting a bit silly? And why not just, as president, show some leadership and get ahead, put your proposal on the table and say, here's where I want to go? This is the
we got one out there, and it wasn't totally on the table. It was kind of oozed out on the side. And all we did was have a bunch of Democrats going after me, going to every special interest, raising hell. And now it is time that the Congress, who has to pass the budget, must pass the budget, get going. I'm still here in a nice, tranquil mood, wanting to discuss it with them. And I will discuss it with them. But I'm using this, you see, we had there's kind of a truce on this abiding by the Marquis of Queensberry's no comment rules. And so we got that during this period of truce. I'm going to put the focus where it belongs and where the American people year after year know it belongs. And that is on the party that controls the United States Congress. And then I'll be here in a reasonable mode come September saying, well, here's our proposals, what's yours, let's go. But it doesn't do any good. They've been laughing all the way to what they think is the electoral bank, saying every time we throw up a proposal, they gun it down and rush off and tell the special interest of one kind or another, we're going to protect you. Ha ha. Now it's time for them to come forward. And we will be more statesmanlike and try to resolve this national problem. Okay,
Also true that when that proposal oozed out, as you say, it was Republicans who were involved in the flight.
That's why I was very careful how I said who leaked it, yes.
They led the fight from that plan in revolt, I think.
Which one?
The proposal that oozed out, as you say.
Listen, if you're ever going to, I can't find anybody elated over any facet of taxes, Democrat or Republican. They want to stick it to the other guy a little bit. But what I'm saying is, we had a proposal. People know what was in it. We had an original proposal with detail. They've had none. And the deal was they were to have a proposal. Now let's come forward with it and set aside politics, because it's getting tough now. It's getting right down to the crunch. And the American people know that the Congress appropriates every single dime and tells us how to spend every single dime. Now they ought to get on with doing something about budget reform, process reform. Nobody's interested in the jurisdiction of this committee or another. The American people want the deficit down. And they don't want to have these delaying arguments about, well, I can't move because the chairman of this committee hasn't passed a continuing previous resolution and seconded the motion. Nobody cares about that. They want the deficit. I can't hear you, Sarah. Yeah, right in the middle.
Mr. President,
I'm coming. Let me second.
Mr. President, should the American people look forward to an ongoing American presence in Saudi Arabia over a period of years?
I don't know about a period of years, but certainly we're going to be there long enough to get the job done. But I can't. I'd like to give you a time frame, and I can't. Yeah.
Mr. President, you called the president of Venezuela to ask him for some help with the oil. Did you talk numbers with him at all?
No, I called him to thank him for what I understood was a Venezuelan willingness to step up and increase production. They can still do it at a reasonably efficient rate, I'm told. And to thank him for his approach on this. He told me that he'd sent his foreign minister to various capitals to coordinate all of this. And I had a couple of other matters to discuss with him, too, that were unrelated to the Persian Gulf. Mainly, I can give you a little hint on Central America, an area where he and I stay in very close consultation and touch on this. But I didn't have if your question was, did I have a specific request of him? No, I didn't. Last one.
Just a second. Are you satisfied with the offer of Mexico as far as oil, 100,000 barrels a day?
I haven't the slightest way of knowing how, whether it ought to be more or less, but I am very, very pleased with Mexico's cooperation in all of this. President Salinas, a courageous man, and I am very pleased that he is willing to pitch in and help. I can't help you with the exact numbers, whether it ought to be 100,000 or something else, but when we heard that, I said that's good. We got a good relationship now with Mexico. Thank you. All right, here's the last. I really do have to run.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just very briefly, you have called repeatedly for the Iraqis to be out of Kuwait, to withdraw unconditionally and completely. You help put sanctions in place to try and force them to do that. How important is that withdrawal? Is it important enough that if the sanctions don't seem to work after a short period, that you will promise to use military force to force Saddam Hussein out?
It is too hypothetical a question. We have a plan, and the plan is to implement fully the United Nations sanctions. And also, part of our plan is to, arrangement with King Fahd, is to help protect Saudi Arabia, and a part of a multinational force now of quite a few countries against aggression from Saddam Hussein, the same kind of aggression that took over Kuwait. So that's where we are. That's the plan, and I just can't help you by going in a hypothetical sense any further. Listen, I hate to run, but I do have an appointment in here, and thank you very much.
You expect to be more specific on sequestration?